I mean, what kind of stuff would you recommend, like for like a brand new podcaster who doesn't have much of a budget? Like, what's like a really simple setup that you might recommend?
I think that can you hear me all right? By the way, I
Yeah, I can hear you
switched
perfectly.
to
I can hear you
the
perfectly.
podcast mic. Great. So I think audio is by far the most important one. Like a crappy video, people can forgive, but if you're sounding, if you sound like you're underwater, or if there's like a piece of paper between you, I think that's annoying. If you have
Sure.
headphones on, for example. So get a somewhat decent mic, I would say.
Yeah, right now I have the Yeti Blue mic. What's your opinion
Hmm.
on that? Because I've heard mixed things. It's like a lot of people use it to start with, but it's
Yeah,
probably not like the best one, right?
I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's what I've heard as well. I even saw someone create a website like the blueyetisucks.com or something like that.
Yeah,
He was
yeah,
very yeah, he was very adamant to not get that one, but I think it's better than a laptop mic.
sure, sure. So
Um,
how much does
what
yours
I
cost?
This one, I think it was €300. So I think
Wow.
350 in dollars. And but the nice thing about this one is it can use USB-C. So you
Right.
don't need an audio interface and a fancy cable and that kind of stuff. And then the difference in sound quality between the audio interface and your laptop, it's very small. You need to have a trained ear to hear it, and a casual listener of your show or of anyone's show, basically, I don't
Yeah.
think they will notice. I like to be just below the best thing. The best thing is probably twice as expensive, but only
Yeah.
10% better. So I like to have like that, the runner-up thing for
Yeah, that's
beginners. I
that's a
think
good
that's
way of
it's
looking at it,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I can already
yeah.
tell your mics probably sound a lot better than mine. How do I sound on your end? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I can hear you just fine. I can listen through it. It's no problem at all. I think it's yeah, it's
Awesome.
decent enough. I would say. Yeah.
Awesome. So you're in the Netherlands, right?
Yes.
Have you ever been
Yes.
to
Very.
the USA?
No, I haven't. To be
Really?
to be honest,
Wow. So,
I speak to a lot of people from the US, and I work with people in the US, but I haven't traveled there.
okay. You speak really good English, so I was curious
Yeah.
if maybe you visited here or something, but did you just learn that in school?
Yeah. Yeah. We start in well, back in my day. I'm 31, so in
Okay.
over I know school, like the school system is different over there, but we have like seventh grade. That's when you're 11 over here. You start English, like very basic English, at that age.
Got it.
But also, as a small child, I had like a PlayStation 1 and like a Game Boy, and
Oh yeah.
like I think the Game Boy Color, I think was the one back in those times. And Dutch isn't a language spoken by millions of people. It's just us.
Right.
So most of these games and things, well, let's stick with the games. It was English, German, Italian, Spanish, I think, were the languages you could pick from. So learning English at a very young age was, yeah, I could not learn English
Right. Yeah, no,
with
that
with
makes
the
sense.
PlayStation.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. I had the PS2 back in the day, so I can
yeah,
relate.
yeah,
Um, all right, so awesome. So you said that you're a UX designer and that you have a job working for a design agency and that you also run your own business, Ask a Designer.
yeah,
Is that right?
yeah. That's
How,
true. Yes,
how did you
yes.
get started in design?
Also, a thing at a very young age. To be honest, I created family. Lots of people in agencies, journalism, photographers. My father worked at an agency too, more on the technical side, but still at an agency. So he brought a lot of his work home with him.
Sure. And
He
that's a
also did
marketing
some stuff.
agency?
No, more like a creative agency in print. Imagine
Got
like
it.
billboards and discount flyers and stuff like that for supermarkets, for example, or stuff you would see on the train station.
Sure.
That kind of stuff. So
Got it.
print media, I think, is the official term.
Got it.
Um, and he would bring that kind of stuff home with him, and then for me as a small kid, that was very impressive. So he gave me his old computer. He let me experiment with all the tools on that computer. So
Wow.
we're talking about like 98 or something like
Yeah,
that. I
that's
think it
that's
was
the
six
year
or
I was
seven.
born. I'm 25 now, so
Yeah. Well, I was 6 or 7 when you were born,
yeah,
and messing around with Macromedia freehand, like that's very old school.
yeah.
So I knew from a very young age, like this is something I wanted to do, but I took a bit of an exit ramp, and I didn't go into print media, but more into like UX and product design,
Okay.
more about the psychology and software, that kind of stuff, but still within the bigger design world, I think I would call it.
So it's like exposure at an early age, and then you took a liking to it, and then kind of going down that route, exploring those interests, and realize that you're
Yeah.
good at it. Um, so you mentioned that, like I had kind of already mentioned this, that you have your own business, but you also work
Yeah.
for a different design agency. I'm
Yeah.
curious to know, like, how your job impacts your entrepreneurial endeavors and your own business. Is
Mhm.
it like a synergistic relationship between the two? How do you view both of those things?
Well, the work is practically the same
Wow.
for let's say the day job and then the side business. I think those are good labels. Um, so if you would take away the labels and would just zoom out and look at my week, you don't really see I have two things. It's the same work.
Sure.
The main difference is that it's, by the way, it's more consultancy in the day job. So mostly it's the client size. That's the big difference. So for the day job, it's really like we have three big banks in the Netherlands. So it's that kind of work,
Right.
working with government agencies, like really the big corporations. So imagine being one of 50 people doing your work, as a big team in an even bigger corporation. And then the stuff I do on the side, it's more, software as a service. They call it solopreneurs.
Sure.
People on their own building things for themselves, for other people, like smaller products, newsletter operators. I'm doing some video editing for people like you as well. People starting a podcast, maybe a YouTube show for their podcast, stuff like that.
Right. You'd send
So
me the link to that podcast you had done, and I watched the probably like the first 25% of it, and you'd said that it was an interesting experience because you were editing the exact podcast that you were on for
yes,
I forget the name of the guy that was that
Arvid.
Arvid, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's a great dude. You can learn a lot from him, and he's basically the friendliest person ever, most helpful person ever, I would say. So I can really recommend anyone,
Yeah, I'm not
if
very
you're
familiar
looking to
with what
build
he does.
something.
I just watched the like a little bit of that first podcast that you sent me. Does he just like run
Yeah.
like a newsletter company that works with other newsletters, or what does he do?
Well, he's a software developer. He made a business a few years ago. He sold the business, then started writing books about it, creating a podcast, interviewing people like him or people he could learn from. And now recently he started another software as a service business called PodScan. And the fun thing is, PodScan is about scanning podcasts. So me saying PodScan, I'm going to say it one more time, PodScan. His app will scan this episode, and he'll get a notification that someone is talking about his product, and then he can use it for marketing purposes. So
Sure.
it's very futuristic, I would say, very impressive.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the challenge for me is that I have a Dutch name, a last name. It's hard to pronounce for non-Dutch speakers. So that's one of the challenges of that platform, like how to transcribe someone trying to pronounce a Dutch name and then having the transcription not make any misspellings of my name.
And so how do
So
you
that
solve for
that
that problem or that challenge?
yeah, he's like a wizard with backend coding and I
So it's
try
like
to
his
learn
own
from him, but I
proprietary
don't.
technology, essentially.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not enough of an expert in that area to confidently say like yes, that's unique or he's using something else. I'm not really sure
Got it.
to be
Okay.
honest.
So
Yeah.
what kind of clients or do you like typically look to serve with either you mentioned like with your day job, like the size of the clients is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Are they different types of companies that you serve, or tell me a little bit about like the types of companies that
Mm.
you target and look to work with?
Well, for myself, after working in software as a service for like 10 years, like that content creator uh, in the world of software as a service, like that's the sweet spot. Uh, because I know from being a designer, I already know how that world works, and then enjoying video thumbnail design and video editing, that kind of stuff, and being a newsletter operator myself, like that overlap, like if you have like the two circles and then the middle little thing that overlaps, like that's the sweet spot. And like the kind of content people create doesn't really matter. Like it can be a newsletter, I can build those and design those. It can also be a podcast for audio editing, it can be video, animation. So yeah, I think that's it. So base, it's also people like you, I would say, like you're creating a podcast, you're probably going to create something later, like to you need to find a way for people to listen to your podcast. So maybe you'll need a Twitter account or a YouTube channel or a newsletter to direct people over there, like that whole package.
Right, the whole
I think
ecosystem.
that's the yeah. That's something I can help people with. And I enjoy doing that a lot. To be honest, a little bit more than the big corporations because of how quick things develop. Like, if you have an idea, I think you can have something by the end of the day. If you work in a corporation, you have to go through many departments and people with
Right.
opinions. And it takes a lot longer before you have something tangible to look at.
Sure, more
So
checks and balances in place that you have to go through as opposed to
yeah,
being able to move
legal has
quickly.
something to say about it, and then there's like the design lead, and then you need to go through a sprint meeting, and it takes so much longer for even for small things, and that can be annoying at times.
Sure. So this is a good segue into one of the questions I had on my list here. Where was it? What are the biggest bottlenecks or issues that you've ran into when running your own business?
Um, I think time is challenging, or well, not time per se, but more time management,
Right.
because you have a few days a week the day job, and then you have, for example, on Friday, I have time for my own thing, or at the end of a work day like this currently. But if someone, if they have, for example, they have a problem, and then it's Tuesday, they're like, "Hey Nick, I need this done today." Well, then I'm working a bit in the evening. Like my evening is starting in an hour, but for you it's morning, I believe.
Yes,
So time zone differences and working evenings, like that's the main challenge
for sure.
for me.
For sure.
Yeah,
Well, I
because
greatly
because
appreciate you making time to chat with me today. So,
well, of course. I enjoy being on shows like this, meeting cool people, and just having a good conversation. So if I can make a bit of time for that, I'm more than happy to do it.
for sure. It's probably a good way for you to network too, right? Like you said, like people
Yeah.
who are starting their podcasts and sending newsletters, like it's a good way to meet people who might be able to
Mhm.
use your services and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like the reason that I started this is that's one of the reasons is to have access to people that I can learn from and to
Mhm.
gain understanding about different career paths that
Yeah.
are maybe less celebrated or less taught, if you will. And so I had a question that I was going to ask, and I just slipped my mind. Let me refer to my list. Sorry, I'll go back and edit this. I'll
Okay, no,
kind
it's
of
okay.
smooth out the rough spots. I'm curious, actually, when you're editing podcasts, what are like the main things uh, that you do when you're editing? Are you just like cutting dead space? Or are you like what does that look like for you? Because I'm very ignorant when
Well,
it comes to editing. I don't really know that world very well, so I'm curious.
I no, I really value like spontaneity. Like, so if I'm speaking a second language, so if I mess up a little bit, or you forget a question and then we laugh a little bit, I would leave that in because
Oh,
it's
really?
so much more. It's so much more real. Like, unless it's a complete like train wreck of a
Yeah,
minute,
sure.
with me trying to like, hey, where's this button? Oh, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Like that kind of stuff. That's what I would remove. But the thing you just mentioned, like, oh, the question slipped my mind. Like, I think that's very real, so I would leave that in.
Sure.
Um,
That's a
that's
good insight.
personal preference. Like, that's what I did for Arvid for all his videos. Some people want it extremely clean and high speed, like cutting out all the I think you called it dead space. So that's personal style. Second thing, like, I'm talking now and you're listening, and at some point you're talking and I'm listening, but the person who's listening, they're likely to make a lot of like little sounds in the background, like confirmation sound, like, oh, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I take that's something I take out. So then you have like your audio track and you see the very little spikes, then like, oh, there's something's happening over there. But if it's a real confirmation, like if you're like, oh, I see, like, that's what I would leave in, because that makes it like more of a conversation. So that's the stuff I'm cleaning up in terms of cutting and editing. I don't like the YouTube style editing, like where you see. I don't even know the official term for it, but you see, like, you can really see there's stuff taken out. Like, just imagine, like, I'm starting a sentence now, I mess up one word, I start again with that same word, I continue, but I take out just that one word. It's too quick and too snappy for me. Like, I
do
want
you
to take my time.
do you see that happening on YouTube for like just like podcasts in general, or like more for like the short form clips of the
For the
podcast?
yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and then for long, more long format YouTube videos, like if this would be a video, like, people would do that technique only for the intro and the outro.
Sure.
But then I'm a bit stressed already before I reached like the very informative, educational middle part of the video.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm a bit of an old soul that way. But
I
it's
agree. I mean, I
oh, well, that's nice.
how important do you think the role of like video specifically is for podcasts? Because I still feel like there's still podcasts that they only do audio and they'll put them on like YouTube, but it'll just be like the logo of the podcast, or it'll be like
Mhm.
just like a static blank screen. Do
Yeah.
you think that like it's worth doing a podcast without video? Because I feel like I feel like people gain value from like seeing how people interact with the person they're
Yeah.
talking to. I really find value in that. I mean, do you agree with that?
I do actually, and if you have only like the static image or like the waveform, at that point it feels like it's just another channel for you to reach more people. Nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Right.
That's perfectly fine. Um, and it's for different people. Like, for example, I listen to podcasts while I'm walking or driving,
As
just
do
as a
I.
background thing. Yeah. Well, I can't. It's not safe to watch a video while driving
Right.
or while walking. I take walks with my daughter. She's 1.5, so she can walk a little bit, but I still have to keep a close look at her, and I can do that with having while having a phone in my hand, looking at the video. So
Yeah,
then I would
sure.
listen to a podcast. Um, and for educational content, I don't really need to watch a video, but if it's more like a show I would follow, as relaxation or for entertainment, like, then
Yeah,
I would sit on my couch and have YouTube on the big screen and then watch it that way. So it just thinking out loud, it depends on the content
sure.
and your goals as well. But yeah. I'm going a bit on a ramble, I think,
No,
but
it's good. It's good.
oh, okay. Well,
So you mentioned
well,
you have
that's
a
my answer.
you mentioned that you have a 1.5-year-old daughter, that you're
Yeah,
31 years old, you have
yeah.
a design job and run your own business on the side. How do you
Mhm.
manage all these different things that consume so much time?
I and what I'm looking for, like the main challenge is, becoming a parent. That really flips your world upside down. I underestimated it, to be honest. At first, I was like, "Well, the baby, she sleeps, she eats. I need to clean her at times, but I can do whatever I want during the day." And boy, was I wrong! I was very wrong about that. But what I'm looking for now, like, maybe I'm in luck, but she's very consistent for periods of time. To be honest, like, I know she usually sleeps until like 7 a.m. I'm a morning person, so I wake at 6 a.m. and then I really have like that early morning 1 hour time to do a lot of stuff.
Sure.
If you're more of a night person, like, you can do it the opposite way. Like, if she falls asleep, you can do like 1 hour after your kid falls asleep. um, but it doesn't work all the time. At times, she's in one of those periods of a few weeks where she doesn't really sleep at all.
Mhm.
That's very tough. Like, and I really see the productivity drop at that moment. But that's okay.
And is that
Maybe it's
because you're losing
also
sleep? Like you're less productive because you're not getting the enough sleep or something
no,
else?
no, no. But when she's like, when I mentioned like that 6 to 7 a.m. 1 hour magic that I have, like, if she wakes up at 5 a.m. because she's really developing stuff, and mentally, and she, because of that, she's awake early. Like, then I don't have that hour, and that
Sure.
hour just falls away.
I see.
The day job is different. Like, we have a daycare over here, so you can bring your kids to, to I think it's called nursery. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
that's the word.
Yeah.
And then you pick her up at 5 p.m. Like, then you have my day job is never in danger that way. But I know I can really look at, side business income. If I would make a graph like of monthly income, I can really see the highs and lows. Like, oh, that's where she slept very well, and that's the week where she was sick, for example. Like, I can really see that I do less on the side business.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It makes sense though.
Mhm.
I'm curious about your job as a designer. How did you get that job?
The current one.
Yes, your current one. Yeah. Or actually, you know what? Let's take a step back. Like when you first got into design, when you first got your first job, how did you like get your foot into the door at that
Mm.
role?
Well, the first job was very tough. Like, it's, I think, not a surprise for any like junior designers or marketers or developers or anyone fresh out of school. Like, getting that first job took me months, close to a year. And it was just luck, to be honest. Like, I had I don't know the number of interviews I've done, but one interview was with two people. It went quite okay, but later on, I found out that one of the two people didn't want to hire me. They were like, "No, I'm a junior person. I'm not sure." But the second one, he was higher in command. Like, he was the managing director. He was like, "No, no, no. I have a gut feeling about this guy, and I have to follow that gut feeling." And that's how I got that first job. So it was
Wow.
just I was just super lucky to talk to someone on a good day and properly saying the right stuff that made him like, "Oh, yeah, maybe we should give this guy a shot."
Yeah,
So,
sure.
but yeah, but on a bad day or saying something else, he might have just as much been like, "Well, no, he's not the one." Um, and it was over here we have like 0 hour contracts. That's literally translated. I'm not sure what the name would be over there, but that's like, you have a contract, but there's not an amount of hours each week on the contract. So they can just call you like, okay, next week we need you for 2 days. So that wasn't very appealing to most people. So maybe I had less competition. I'm
Sure.
not sure. I never asked. um, but it did give me my first experience, my first real projects, and that company was acquired at some point. And because I was the last person in, I was also the first person out because they needed
Right.
to get rid of a few people. But I really noticed that getting a second job was much easier. Took me way less time,
Is that right?
just because I had that 1 year of experience and a few projects. So
So what was that
uh,
experience like? Did you learn like a lot really fast and that allowed you to just like upskill into your next role, or what was that experience like?
yeah, well, you really notice that the real world, real business world, is very different compared to what you learn in school. Like, for
Hmm.
example, in school, you do a project, it's a 10-week project, you have a lot of time, you get feedback, you can retry things. And then you get to your first job, and then they ask you the same thing as they would ask you in school. But instead of 10 days, sorry, instead of 10 weeks, you have 2 days.
Wow.
That's a big culture shock. So I
Yeah,
was like,
sure.
okay, let me make a few notes, let me do the official thing I learned in school. And then on the first day, like the boss was like, no, that's crap, let's not do it that way anymore. Here's how I would do it. And then you have to erase all the things you've learned from school, and look at how real real people do it. So real people, quote unquote, of course. But
Sure.
yeah, that was a big culture shock for me, like the difference in speed.
Right.
And
Okay.
and maybe another thing is, like, in school you learn, like, you have step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you're done. But in a company, it could be that step 1 has been done by someone else already, or maybe you need to do step 2 twice and then skip step 4 and then finish with step 1 again.
Right.
Because
Like more back and forth and that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, exactly. It's more like you have your toolkit, like your belt of tools, and you need to know which one to pick for specific situations. I feel like that's, well, I didn't learn that in school, and I think, looking at the people I'm helping now, like junior designers and mentorship, that kind of stuff, I noticed that many people have the same experience. How school is it's all about theory. Like, this is what we would do in a perfect situation,
Sure.
but that's not the case in on the job.
Got it. Do you think your
Yeah.
experience studying at school was valuable? I mean, did you learn? Because a lot of people, I feel like they'll say, they went to school, they got their degree, but they didn't really learn anything until they actually started getting reps in the field. Um, I don't know, is that different with design, or how do you look at your education during the college years when you contrast that with the experience that you gained when you started working in the field?
Well, for me, I already knew, broadly speaking, what I wanted to do. Something with design. Like, that's how specific I was.
Sure.
But over here, well, at least in that time, so we're talking about like 2012 or something like that, when I finished high school and had to go to college. Having a college degree was a requirement. Like, every job would have, like, if you look at the requirements, the first one, maybe after experience. So the second one was, you need to have a degree in this or that.
Has that changed
So
at all in the last 15 years?
well, a few years back, it was different, because there was because of lockdowns, and then high demand for designers or IT people. Um, it was very easy to get a job even
Sure.
without an education. But now, when things are going back to normal, it looks like companies can be more picky, and then having a full education, it could be an advantage for you, like, while on the job hunt.
Sure.
Yeah, so I have helped people find a job, fellow designers, without a formal education. But I think today it would be much harder.
And
You
so
need
how
to
do
be
you
really
recommend
special.
someone like that without a degree finds a job? What kind of advice would you give those people?
So, well, you need to replace the education with something else, and I think the portfolio is a big one.
Sure.
If you go to school, you get. I did 2 internships, and well, that's 2 big projects. So
Right.
it's not an official project because it's a school project, and some companies look down on school projects versus real projects. But
I didn't know
still,
that.
it's not.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really true. Well, yeah, well, thanks for your portfolio, but that's something you did in a boot camp. It's fake. That kind of stuff. I think it's a bit short sighted, but
Sure.
I can change that world on my own. So you have to deal with it and find work another way. So what I saw on Reddit recently, we started talking on Reddit, but in another community on Reddit, someone just started a topic, and that person said, "Well, I'm going to design your landing page for free if you can review it for me and give me a testimonial afterwards." Like that's a very forward way of doing things. Like you're not complaining about the world, or you're not doing another boot camp or buying another course. You're really going outside into the real world, trying to help people, and that opens doors for you. Like if you do a good job,
Sure.
people might recommend you to other people, and then you can ask money because they didn't know you did it for free for that first person. So that kind of networking, being a friendly and accessible person, being a useful member of a community, I think is the best way to go. And probably some mentoring or coaching on the side. Like, okay, I don't have an education, but I did finish my first project. How can I best present my project to other people? Like that's
Sure.
something
Yeah.
a coach or a mentorship could really help, because you have no clue.
And how might you help someone distribute that project to the right type of person to get an entry level position?
Mm. Well, that really can take some time,
Sure.
and it's error prone as well. Like you really have to try things out. I tried writing on Medium, like the big article website.
Yeah, similar to like Substack, right?
Something similar.
Okay.
It I got a few views and then some advertising income, but it was like $40 a month or something.
Wow. Okay.
But while seeing other people make like a full-time living from Medium, but I didn't succeed over there. So that's an experiment. I learned a lot of things, but it failed kind of. So then I went to LinkedIn. I tried Reddit. I bought access to a bigger community full of like-minded people. It was expensive for me, but in the end worth it. So I'm trying different things, and then if something shows potential, then I would double down on that thing. And it's I can't really say like this is the one for everyone, because for me, being like more focused on software as a service and newsletter operators, I would try and find a newsletter operator community or a software as a service community. But maybe if you're really all about sports or games, you need to find communities full of people like that.
So
So
essentially
I can.
finding where those people hang out and just being active within those communities
Yes,
and trying to further conversation within those communities.
exactly. Without being like this super obvious person only looking to strangle money out of you.
Right, like the
It's,
guru type, right? That's
yeah, well, maybe, but you also have these people. They join and they're like, "Hello, I'm Nick. I'm a designer for software as a service people. Here's my website. Please purchase something from me." Or when
right.
I'm asking like, "Hey Jack, how are you?" Oh, so you're a website. Oh, did you know I offer? That's too forward.
Yeah, just like really
Um,
highly manufactured interactions that
yes,
people
yes,
just can smell from 10 miles away, right?
yes, you can smell it.
Yeah,
That's yeah, so that's what I mean by being a friendly and valuable member for a community. Like you give value to the other people just by maybe if people are asking for help in their communities, and if you just provide the help and for example, if someone would ask like, hey, I have these 2 variations of my newsletter, for example, do you like A or B? Like most people would say, well, I like A. or some people would say, well, that's level one. And then you have a few people say they're like, well, do B, but with a little bit of an adjustment here and there. Like that's the next level. But the thing I would do is like, well, looking at this and how you're presenting yourself, I would suggest C, like something completely different.
Mm,
Um, uh, Trying to make it an improvement, of course, and then explaining my reasons why to that person. Like that really makes you stand out. You're valuable. People can learn from you just by seeing that comment. And it would take me an hour to create that version C. But it did end up, that person reached out to me like, hey, Nick, that's super valuable. I have these 2 or 3 things also very similar to that thing. Can I hire you for a short project to improve those things as well? Like that's usually the route I would take.
for sure.
But the downside is it's a bit of an investment, and it can, it can also yield no returns, because sometimes people are like, well, thanks, and
Yeah,
that's it. They just take the thing you did. But it's about, like, I think it's called increasing your luck surface. Like if you try it multiple times, like you're more likely to have someone reach out to you like, hey, I'm following you for a while, I see you're super nice to people, you appear like an expert. I have this and this problem, can you help me with that? Well, and
sure.
then that's a nice way in. It's probably better for the soul than applying for 500 jobs and getting an automated rejection all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you
And
you
you
mentioned earlier like
learn
that
all
these
the time.
sorry, what?
And you learn also, like if they don't hire you, you're still working on your craft, you're working on how to present yourself, how to write about the things you do. So it's super valuable regardless of the outcome.
Yeah, for sure. You'd
Yeah.
mentioned earlier that like for someone without a degree and finding an entry level role, it can take a lot of time and it can be quite a process. And you mentioned how trying to be helpful and provide value up front to people in different
Hmm.
communities to get your foot into the door. That it's not like an overnight thing. That's the type of thing that takes time, but
Yeah.
it sounds like it's more about casting a wide net so that you can be top of mind when a need arises, because you really
Hmm.
can't create demand in someone, but what you can do
True.
is understand how to be valuable when a need does arise, so that
Hmm.
you'll be top of mind, and they'll be more likely to, like you said, hit you up and be like, hey, I'm working on this project, can you help?
Yes. And then that's like a super solid foundation. Um, but I also know, like, you need to be in a position to afford it. Like if you're really, if you really need a job quickly, like if you have a financial situation where you can't really wait for a year of experimenting, I know that's a different case. Also, like the second, like more expert layer on top of that foundation would be, like if you're in that community, hopefully at some point you start to notice some patterns. Like, for example, for me in the design world, in the software as a service world, especially when you're talking to like indie hackers and solopreneurs, they really want to do things on their own. Like they don't want to hire people. They're very proud of that label of solopreneur, emphasis on solo. So they're like, well, but I would love to learn. Like then I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Maybe I should create more of an info product for people like that. I shouldn't offer them my services because they want to do things on their own. At the same time, you also have sometimes software as a service people. They're like, okay, they're evolving out of solopreneurship. They're like, okay, I've done everything myself so far. It's going very well. I'm making some money with my product. Now I want to become more professional. Now I'm looking for a designer to take over, or a marketing person to take over, or a salesperson. And then if you can create a landing page, it really highlights that struggle. Like I've done it myself, but now I need help. Like then you can also create an extra way for people to find you. But that requires, talking to a lot of people and listening in on the community, and seeing if you can spot those patterns. But
Sure.
that's more an advanced strategy, I would say.
Yeah, like market research almost in a way, but being conducted in
Yeah.
real time. or a form of market
Yes.
research, perhaps.
Yeah. I noticed by myself when you mentioned market research, I'm like, oof,
Yeah,
that's not something like that. Sounds very scientific, and maybe that's even better. I'm not sure, but for me, it was just like after talking to 20 people. At some point, you're like, wait a minute, the previous person and 5 people before that person, they also mentioned the same thing. Like maybe there's something there. So it
it's almost like finding
it,
patterns within qualitative data is what it sounds like to
yeah.
me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. And then you walking through the data in real life,
Yeah,
basically.
right, right.
I never looked at spreadsheets. It's just, I know I enjoy talking to people, learning from them. Yeah, spotting patterns. I think we as human beings are very good at spotting patterns.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're
Yeah.
pattern recognition creatures, right? Is what they say.
Yeah, I think that's what I heard in a documentary somewhere.
Yeah, I don't even remember where I heard that, but just within my own experiences, I would say that's probably true. Um,
Yeah.
like we evolved to sense not only dangers but changes in our environment. It's like so fundamental to our evolution as a species. It's a bit of a tangent, I guess, but
Yeah, that's true.
so you'd mentioned that you also run your own newsletter, right?
Yeah.
What do you write about in your newsletter? What's like the whole point of that?
It's one of the first things I did on my own. I worked at a startup as a designer. Being the first hire and
Wow.
the only designer.
Really? Okay, I
Uh,
didn't know that. I didn't catch that when I was looking at your LinkedIn, but
oh,
that's
it's a long
interesting.
time ago.
Okay.
It was the second design job I ever had. So I think it was like 2017, 2018. And that's at some point the startup ran out of money, sadly, like many startups do, like
Right.
not finding an investor in time, or
Yep.
not finding enough paying customers in time. So they let me go, including many other people. They really slimmed down and only continued with like founders and maybe an intern or something like that. So I was kind of sad because I really enjoyed my time there. I enjoyed the thing they were doing. So I wrote about it. Like it had a bit of a clickbait title. It was called "I failed as a designer at a startup." It's that's kind of clickbaity, right?
Sure.
Um, but people started reaching out to me like, "Hey Nick, this helped me made a decision to join or not join a startup as a designer." So that was very motivating. Like, wait a minute, the thing I'm writing, it's not for self-healing only, because I needed to write things, get things off my chest, but it's also helpful for other people. Maybe I should write another article. And some people wanted my help, so I also started offering mentorships. But then someone told me like, yeah, you're writing on Medium, but and on LinkedIn, but what if they introduced me to platform risk? Like, what if Medium tomorrow decides to change something, like, or to take away or to suspend your account for whatever reason?
Right.
Like, that's something that can happen. And they're like, what you should do? Like, have your own website, because it's yours. You can make backups, you can download it, and/or start a newsletter, because the newsletter list, it's also yours. It will
Right.
be there forever, if you make backups, of course. So that's how that started, and I made all the newsletter mistakes ever, because I learned on my own.
So like what kind of mistakes as in terms of running newsletters?
Well, the biggest one was being obsessed with the number of subscribers over subscriber quality.
Sure.
And when I say subscriber quality, it's not like you're a good person or not, but what I mean is like a subscriber
Who engages
who's
with the
looking for
emails?
the no, well, also, but not per se, but more like the um, it should be a subscriber who's looking for the things you can offer them. Like if
Right.
they're looking for a course and I'm offering one-on-one mentorship, like that's not a good fit. Like they won't get value from me, and they're likely not to turn into a customer for me. So there's no match there.
Do you think
So I
that's
was
like a
really
common mistake that like a lot of newsletters make in terms of just trying to optimize for the KPI of quantity without having any way of delineating what makes a low quality subscriber different than a high quality subscriber?
um, yeah, I think that's very common. I think because that's also very positive for yourself. Like, whoa, I got a subscriber. Oh, I got 10 subscribers. Or on YouTube, like I get the silver play button. That kind of stuff. It's almost addictive. So I
Sure.
would do anything I possibly could to get more people on the list, and then I would flex like, hey, I got 100 subscribers. But yeah, nobody would read the newsletter, and let alone purchase something. So yeah, that I think that's very common. Yeah.
So how do you grow your newsletter list?
Well, I decided to do both the website and the newsletter, and then at the end of my articles, I would have like this call to action, like if you want to have more like this, join the newsletter and be the first to know when I have a new similar article.
So like
And then
posting
I
on
would make
LinkedIn and
sure.
stuff, you're saying?
No, on my own, one of my own websites.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Potentially on LinkedIn too, but that's something I'm still figuring out, because you have the algorithm, and then outside links, they don't really show up, and that kind of stuff. And
Sure.
then again, the time management, because it's yet another thing to do and not much time available to do it.
Right.
And then I would rather focus on helping people, because it helps them and it makes me some money. So if you have 1 hour in a day to work on your own thing, for example, 1 hour in the evening, I would much rather make that a paid hour versus writing an article that might or might not resonate with people.
Sure.
So I really have to pick my battles at some point. Yeah, but in the future, maybe then I will go to LinkedIn and Twitter as well. But
So
that's
you mentioned that you're getting subscribers by posting on your website and putting calls to action just for people to subscribe to your newsletter there.
Mhm.
How do you drive people to your website? Like how are you making sure that the right type of traffic gets to your website and sees that call to action?
the well, it's a bit of a circle. To be honest, it started with the website starting. It started to appear in search engines, and then people, that's the way in, and then they would subscribe to the newsletter, and then whenever I send out the newsletter, they would go back to the website.
So would you
Then
do
they
like
say,
SEO optimization intentionally for that reason?
yes,
Oh, really?
yes,
Okay. Eh,
yeah. That's so at its uh, at its all-time high, like my design educational website, like the content creation I did over there, the website had, I think, 18,000 visitors each month.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Uh, yeah, it's not, compared to some of the SEO experts, it's not much, but from someone like me starting from scratch, not knowing what they were doing,
Yeah,
I
those are
felt like
serious numbers though. 18,000 per
yeah,
month. That's serious. I mean, that's a lot of people.
yeah, exactly. But those, keep in mind, also were people, because I had the same issue. I want as many people on my website as possible without really paying attention to, what kind of people. So, the number of people where I would have a good fit, that was way less than 18,000. And I would start doing projects, like I'm going to design newsletters for people, I'm going to do product design for software as a service. That took over. So the website dropped to 8,000 people a month, and now I'm trying to balance my time a little bit better, and now it's back at 9, so it's at 50% of its best moment. But I'm also taking growth much more serious now, and much slower. Like, I want to have one good fit person for my website versus 10 random people.
Right.
So I'm really letting go of the addiction to getting the numbers up, and
Sure.
that's very challenging because it's less rewarding on the short term, but hopefully more rewarding in the long term.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think about how like like in e-commerce, for example, there's a lot of brands that run like their email marketing or a newsletter, if you will, and it's like a lot of these companies, they'll be so insularly focused on opt-in rate or quantity of subscribers, and they'll end up doing things to optimize for that metric without considering the broader downstream consequences. So, for example, in e-commerce, like it's pretty easy to inflate list growth by running a giveaway. But then the problem
Mhm.
is you're paying for a list of low quality bargain hunters that are unlikely to ever actually purchase, or at least at full price. And so you end up
Yeah.
paying for a larger list of people who aren't going to yield a return on that
Yeah.
investment. And so there's different ways you can game the opt-in rate, but a lot of people don't seem to consider, in the newsletter space, that is, they don't seem to consider, like I said, like the broader consequences of that, when
Mhm.
you're
Mhm.
only focused on one KPI that um, is a really co-opted KPI. Like, 'cause
Yeah.
everyone, like you said, everyone wants to feel good about, seeing the numbers go up, but it really is more about the subscriber purchase rate, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Whether that's e-commerce or if you're selling info products, I guess, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very true. And I think that's a perfect example you just mentioned, because I had a Slack community for designers looking to get hired. It's a free community, so people would join and then also opt in for the newsletter list if they wanted to. Um, but they were people looking for a free community and free tips through a newsletter. And then if none of them, or hardly any one of them, would click like the purchase button in the newsletter footer, because they are really focused on like, this is a free community, I'm looking for free stuff. Nothing wrong with that, but that's what I meant exactly with there's no overlap in what they are looking for and what I'm offering.
right,
I found out the hard way. At some point, I had 3,000 subscribers, but a very low engagement rate, like, and conversion rate was even lower. Like, if you would ask like marketing people or newsletter operators, like, what's the solid conversion rate, like they were like, be like, well, 2 or 3% or whatever, and I was at like 0.2, while still following all the newsletter best practices. So I was like, well, maybe there's a misalignment between what I'm saying and who I'm saying it, or who I'm creating it for, so that's a harsh realization. Like, that's
sure.
a smack in the face. um, yeah, but I'm learning from it, and I'm doing better now. Slowly seeing signs of my content reaching more people I want to reach. Uh, so that's also motivating, like
So do
being
you
able
like try to
to
talk?
improve things.
Do you ever try to like talk to your subscribers and ask them like what type of content they might benefit from or what type of content they're looking for?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, that's as a designer, especially in UX design, like user experience design, it's one of the main things. Like, understand your users and understand your well, not users in this case, but let's say audience, like people in your audience. And it's very interesting what you'll notice then. Like, people would pay thousands of dollars for a UX bootcamp. Some people only want to watch like free tutorials on YouTube. And I found out that people don't like lists and ebooks. Well, in my audience, at least.
Sure.
So I stopped promoting my like UX jobs handbook. Like, the like, it was a 50-page, like a mega super long article with
And
all
that
the
served as like a
best
lead
tips and
magnet,
tricks.
so to speak.
No, it was a paid product.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay,
Uh, yeah, yeah. It was like $20 or something for
gotcha.
like all my experience coaching designers, and struggling to find a job myself as well. But it was a book, and I found out that the designers, they want to look at things, or they want coaching, like through a bootcamp or one-on-ones. So I decided to, well, let's not promote the ebook and change it to a for example, writing a case study and how to do it. I turned it into a template they can use, accompanied by a short video course where I do an example. Like, this is how I would do it, and here's the template, and
Sure.
good luck with that. And um, that resulted in more of an alignment and more sales
So you went
each
from
month.
charging for the ebook, and then you went to giving that away for free. Am I understanding that correctly? Or did I
No,
mis?
I just stopped promoting it at all. Like it wasn't longer. I would create content clusters,
I
like
see.
writing articles that would answer one question from the book, and then at the end of the page, it's like, by the way, I have more like this
I see.
in this book. And that wouldn't convert at all. But if I would do the same thing for the course, like this is how I would tackle this one problem outside as part of a 10-step approach to case studies. Do you want the other 9 steps as well? Here's the course. Like it's the same approach, like one part free, then the rest paid.
Sure.
Like that converted way better. And I'm sure there's much more that I can do with email sequences, and I'm trying to learn that as well. But that's the way of me talking to users and understanding what they're looking for. So yeah, I try to every email that I send, at the bottom it's like, do you have a question, can I help you with anything, that kind of stuff, please reach out. And if someone replies to me, I always make sure to reply back or record like a Loom video where I explain something. And I would sit down with people every now and then as well, like we're sitting down now, like
Sure.
in a
Yeah.
one-on-one
I feel
meeting.
like that's the type of thing that's missing when it comes to like when we talk about like providing value, so to speak. Like everyone is so obsessed with email sequences and automated drips and email flows, but I really do think that people who take the time to connect with people one on one and try to
Mm,
understand where people are at and meet them where they're at and walk
yeah.
them through whatever problem they're dealing with, like that is so much more valuable in terms of jump starting an audience or building a community. At least it seems to me. It's a good insight that you share.
Yeah, and that earlier today or yesterday, I think Justin Welsh, like the smartest person ever in this regard, he had this nice comparison on LinkedIn, I believe, or on Twitter, like person with $0 revenue is asking these questions, like what tools should I use, like what font should I use, and then people making lots of money or better, smarter people are asking these questions, like what's my ICP, like why now, why me, what makes me unique, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, what you just said made me think of that. Like, yeah, let's not focus too much on should I use ConvertKit or should I use MailerLite or Mailchimp or whatever. But let's focus on like why would someone subscribe to me and not to someone similar?
So this
Like what
question
makes
might be a little ironic, but what platform do you use for your newsletter?
I have that's not a surprise, but I have 2 newsletters. I have one on MailerLite and one on ConvertKit.
And do you separate them just to like test the different platforms and see which you like better?
Yeah. That's the one. I have. I started with Mailchimp because someone recommended it to me, but I didn't like it a lot, so I switched to MailerLite. And then that second newsletter, I had an idea to do that to start it, and then ConvertKit had like their new promotional tier in their pricing, which made me go like, well, let's try it out.
Sure.
And because and the main reason, actually, to be honest, is the newsletter operators, like my target audience, the ones I'm creating newsletter templates for and doing the design work. So my paid customers, they all use ConvertKit. So I think it would be better for me to also understand how that platform works.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's why I decided to also try ConvertKit. But I don't have a reason to leave MailerLite. I'm actually quite
Ha-
happy with how things are going, and I'm too connected with automations and how it works on my website to currently switch around. But anyway, so
Have you ever used
yeah,
or like tested out Beehive at all? Because that's a platform that has just skyrocketed in popularity in the last year, it seems like.
yeah.
Have you noticed
Yeah,
that?
I did notice it. I'm always a bit wary of like super hype. Like will it be there? Will Beehive still exist in a year? Like, and not because I'm doubting what they're doing, but as someone, if you see it for the first time, like I always want to take a step back and see how it develops. Like, will the bubble pop or will it stay? It looks like they're staying. So I was recently actually talking to a Beehive expert, like someone really working with it a lot,
No
and
kidding.
I'm learning from that person. We don't talk as much anymore, but at some point we were, you know, I even had a meeting with him like this, just to getting to know
And
each
so what
other.
you learn about it?
Um, well, to be honest, it's another tool. Like ConvertKit is a tool, MailerLite, Mailchimp. It's all a tool. Like I think they have a recommendation network as well, which is very useful. I'm not not really sure at the moment anymore,
Like the
but
boost? Is that what you're referring to?
I'm not sure.
Like the
I'm not sure
Beehive
actually.
boosts recommend you said recommendations. I wasn't sure if maybe you're referring to I think what makes them like so alluring for like new creators is that they have a feature where if you subscribe to their newsletter, they'll recommend other ones. And if people will also subscribe to those other ones, then you get a kickback.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the one I meant. I just forgot how
Yeah,
how they call the feature. Like that's super positive. But Spark Loop has the same thing for ConvertKit. So then you have like two tools to use with the same or with similar features. And yeah, then at that point it's just a tool. And but for me, what I really notice, like if you have a lead, if you have a potential client, they really value that you're able to work in the tools they're already using. So for me, the
right.
main reason to become proficient with Beehive, sorry, would be to convert those leads. Like I don't really have a reason to change to Beehive or something else as my main like my main provider. Yeah, but I think it's always smart to learn more tools to be a more to have a bigger pool to fish from.
Yeah, exactly. Just it goes back to being able to meet your potential clients where they're at and being able to provide value based on that. I'm curious, what do you think separates like newsletter platforms that are here to stay and those that fizzle out? Or I guess a better way of asking this question is why are some newsletter platforms better or worse than others? Because some people who might not know about the differences might think, oh, they all do the same stuff what makes any of them different?
Well, for me, the main reason to go to MailerLite was pricing. Like they were more accessible for me, someone with a list, but not any clue what to do with it. So pricing was important for me. Um, I think the most important thing next to pricing for me was like the automation tools they have. Like if someone would subscribe, let them follow a sequence, and then the if else,
Sure.
the conditions. That was super important for me. And then as a designer, I also would say ease of use. Like, is it understandable for a beginner? And MailerLite, like the name suggests, like it's very light, very very minimalistic in a good way. So I was very happy to or am very happy to be a part of that platform. Yeah, so I think that would be my top three, like pricing, automations, and ease of use.
Sure. Yeah, the reason I
Yeah.
ask is I've used Beehive. I've sent a few different newsletters, but mainly just like testing different ideas I've had or trying to get acquainted with how building newsletters works.
Hmm.
And so I've used Beehive to do that. Like I don't have any people on the list, but what I've
Hmm.
found is like it's very minimalist and very simple and it's pretty user friendly, but I don't believe there's like any of the automations that uh, can be configured on the back end. Um,
Hmm.
I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it's just like pretty cut and dry as far as like
Yeah.
just sending newsletters without all the automations and stuff.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
and there's probably like newsletter operator experts listening to this at some point. They're like, no, 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 Nick, you're super wrong because reasons.
yeah.
But I'm, as a newsletter operator myself, I'm not an expert at all. But in terms of designing a newsletter and building it for people, that's my main skill. If you talk about
So
newsletters, so
given that you do like the design work and given that you do newsletter management for others. Like,
Yeah.
have you ever considered doing any work for like e-commerce brands who run their own email lists in terms of like email marketing? Because if you have the graphic design skills and you know how to manage newsletters, it seems like
Mm.
that would be like a very synergistic like combination of your
Yeah.
own skill sets.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And maybe one thing to clarify is like I don't operate the newsletter. I don't write or send the newsletters. But for like non-technical people, usually the maybe the marketers or like the newsletter founder, I make sure that the templates work, and then the logic, like if they want to show or hide like an announcement section, like how can they make that happen easily, like and have a nice header and footer, that kind of stuff. But I don't manage the actual newsletter for people.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at my list of questions here.
Mhm. Yeah.
What
Maybe,
led what
maybe you can cut the next part out actually, because I do have to go pick up my daughter in a bit
Sure.
from her grandmother. So
Okay.
if we can, if you have tons of questions still, we can do maybe a part two at some point.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
I'm enjoying this talk a lot. But I do have to wrap up in like, let's say, 5 minutes or something.
Sure. Okay, let me take a quick skim over this list. Um, last question I have for this, and I'd be
Okay.
more than happy to schedule a round two for this because this has been a great talk
Mhm.
so far. The only other question I'll leave you with is, like, are there any questions that I maybe could have asked but didn't, or are there any questions that would have been really good for me to ask, but I missed?
Well, I think short answer is no. For me personally, I really like the natural flow of a conversation like we're having. It's a nice mix of you asking me something based on what you wrote down, and then having like, hey, wait a minute, I need to ask a follow-up question that you probably didn't prepare. And then at some point you also share some of your own knowledge, like, hey, with the KPIs and that kind of stuff. So it's a nice mix, if you ask me.
I appreciate
I
you sharing
enjoy
that.
my yeah, of course, I enjoy my time here. Otherwise I wouldn't have suggested the follow-up,
For sure, and
because then I
I
would
greatly appreciate that.
then I would be like, whew, I'm glad this is over, but that's not the case. No, I'm enjoying how you're doing things.
I really appreciate
You're
you sharing that.
yeah.
Yeah, I think
You
like
show you show an interest in people. I think that's and you listen. I think as a host, that's important.
well, that's very good feedback. I think
Yeah.
honestly, I only looked at that questions list like maybe twice or three times during the call. And like we were chatting on Reddit, and I was like, yeah, I always like to prepare lists and have an outline, but at the end of the day, I really just like to wing it. And
Mhm.
I think it helps to have an outline so that I can like fall back
Yeah.
on something. But I'm right there
Yeah.
with you. Like I agree. I think it's better to just have it be conversational and yeah, I really enjoyed this chat, and I'd be more than happy to do a round two.
Yeah.
And I think I could definitely benefit from some of your insights in terms of improving my setup and improving my own
Yeah.
podcast. So thank you very
Great.
much.
Well, thank you very much.